From KPRC2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Good morning. Every year for the past 40 years, the Houston Area Survey has taken the pulse of the community about all things of importance in the eyes of those being surveyed in Harris County. In recent years, the survey has taken place as a part of the great work of the Insitute for Urban Research. And this year's survey, after a year of the pandemic, takes on a higher level of importance. Every year, the survey asks, what issues are more important? Survey respondents can only choose one. 25% unsurprisingly say that public health is the biggest problem facing Houstonians. That's the biggest one identified. Next, the economy at 20%, up from 13% last year. 14% cited crime as the biggest problem, and perhaps not so big a surprise after a year when fewer people were out on the roads during a pandemic. Traffic dropped from 30% down to 13%. Dr. Steve Klineberg started this survey 40 years ago, more recently as it was embraced by the Insitute for Urban Research, which he co-founded. And this year's survey, conducted along with Robert Bozick, Senior Fellow at the Insitute. Good morning, Dr. Klineberg. Good to talk to you again. After a year of pandemic living, you did this survey. In January, you started this. What results in this year's survey were expected, and which ones were a big surprise?
Well, the one you just mentioned, I think, was expected, right? That suddenly, this has been the last interviews we did for the 2020 survey was on March 12th, and on March 16th, 2020, the pandemic hit Houston. So it's been a year of lockdown and oil prices collapsing and terrible diseases and a totally different kind of world. And so we've been asking people, some of the same questions over these years and watching deep effects that the pandemic has had in terms of across the board stress. People say no difference between Anglos and African Americans, Latinos, and then the exaggeration, the underlining of the terrible inequalities in Houston. The African Americans and Latinos are far more vulnerable, facing far more serious problems. Those are the most vulnerable, have suffered the most in Houston, and that's been a very important part of the story of this last year and a critical challenge for all of us as we go forward.
You talk about that, and then one of your graphics talked about the inequality, and 44% of blacks and 45% of Hispanics surveyed said they didn't have $400 in emergency expense money. I found that amazing. Many of those same people said they had problems paying for housing this past year. What would you expect local leaders to do with that kind of knowledge once they have it?
How many of our citizens are living on the edge, and how critical the African American and Latino communities are, because that's going to be our future, right? The story of America, and especially in Houston, is the aging of Anglos and the young people, everybody under the age of 20 in all of Harris County. 51% of Latinos and 19% are African Americans, and just 21% are Anglos. So 70% of all of us under the age of 20 are African American, Latino, the two groups far more devastatingly hit by this pandemic, living on the edge with enormous challenges. The future of Houston depends on our ability to make sure that African American, Latino young people are prepared to do the jobs of the 21st century, now that the blue-collar jobs have disappeared and education has become the critical determinant of a person's ability to earn enough money to support a family in the new global knowledge economy of the 21st century.
I was going to ask you this question later, but since you touched upon that about how big of a problem, how big of a population Hispanics and blacks are in Harris County, outside of Harris County, it's a whole different world, a different kind of world, at least as you go north in Montgomery County, not so much necessarily in Fort Bend County. How soon will we be stretching out and doing more? I know you've done surveys in those areas in the past. It just feels like it's time to do something else again, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Well, one of the great things is having Robert Bozick join us at the Kinder Institute. We're going to be able to start planning for much broader surveys, to have 3 or 4 surveys during the year rather than just that big number one survey each year, and a chance to go back to looking at this remarkable multi-centered metropolitan region that is the 9-county region of Harris County plus Fort Bend, all the others. That's spread over an area of 10,000 square miles. So it's almost as large as the entire state of Massachusetts. This, I tell people, is the blob that ate East Texas, and that's spread everywhere. And then your point that that Fort Bend County is the most ethnically diverse county we think on the entire planet. Fort Bend County today is 20% African American, 21% Asian, 24% Latino, 33% Anglo. You can't get much closer to 1/4. And then you've got Montgomery County that's still 75% Anglo. So we're a wonderful mix of what all of America is becoming.
And we talk about that and the mixture there, but also your survey dealt with race relations in some point, and it yielded some interesting results. The killing of George Floyd and protests that erupted around the country and the world created a sense of awareness, perhaps among non-minorities, about the challenges faced by minorities. Your survey asked people about their thoughts about the criminal justice system and minorities, with more people now starting to think that the system is actually biased, is it not?
Yes, fascinating. And the Anglos and Latinos who, I guess understandably, sort of resisted the recognition of the deep inequalities that particularly plague the African-American community, they, for the first time, had a significant increase in the percent saying the criminal justice system is biased against blacks.
What about immigration? Your attitudes about undocumented immigrants, and I know this survey was taken between January 18th and March 29th, so there was some of the current crisis at the border was involved within this survey, I'm guessing. What was the attitude you recorded from among people about immigration and undocumented immigrants?
Yeah, looking at just U.S.-born Anglos, just been watching over the years, kind of a increasing embrace of the diversity, increasing record. So the question you're asking about the DREAM Act, the Dreamers, went from 75% to 83% this year, saying they're in favor of a path to legal citizenship for the children of illegal immigrants if they speak English and have no criminal record. And that growing, despite the last 4 to 5 years of sort of anti-immigrant rhetoric, we are embracing this diversity. And what's striking among Anglos is that the single most powerful predictor of comfort with diversity and support for immigration is not gender, it's not education, it's age. Younger Anglos take for granted this diversity. And we older Anglos are still struggling to accept that. You got to be gentle with us old Anglos. Growing up in the 60s and 70s was a different world than growing up in the 1990s and 2000s. And
note to self.
Human nature that says what I'm familiar with feels natural, what I'm unfamiliar with feels unnatural. So you got this fascinating sort of coming to embrace what is the story of Houston. We are the most ethnically diverse major city in the country. We are where all of America will be in about 25 years.
We've got more to talk about. I know you're going to be kind enough to stick around and talk with me more on my Newsmakers Extra. We're going to take this conversation to Newsmakers Extra on click2houston.com. Hope you'll join me there. Thank you for that, Doc.